Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
We are back with part 2 of Circa Sports Thursday. And here we are. We got one of the champions with us, Tony Gordon at Derbify, one of the Millions champions, 2022, I believe, where this man has the highest percentage of winning picks that has ever happened in Circa. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Kev, and thanks for having me on, man. Great to be here, dude. The invitation every year is awesome. Come back to see all the winners. Get to be part of this whole event here. And, when I see all these winners in jackets, dude, it's a close family, man. It's fun. So.
Yeah, and that's the jacket this man's wearing right now. You
Right.
get a blue jacket for winning the contest. And, Tony is definitely no slouch when it comes to this. And Tony is an extremely experienced person. Like he said, community. And now he's just got all these friends here, which is awesome. But that's how they treat you here at the Circa. Why don't you tell everybody how long you've been in the actual contest itself doing this?
So, Kev, this is my 18th season doing in contest play. I started in 2007 at the Westgate, and this is pick 5. So, Super Contest 2007 was my first year. I spent 11 years on the grind trying to cash until I finally did in 2018. For these newbies that come in and cash their first time, congratulations to them. But this was a grind for me for 18 years. I'm proud of what I accomplished, but it was a lot of hard work. So, yeah.
Hard work is the key to winning these things, and that's what Tony does. But you know what? There's a lot of newcomers to these contests, as we see every single year, don't we? And this thing keeps growing and growing, and I think we're going to hit the 6,000 people you need to get into this. But what kind of advice would you give to anybody new signing up for these contests?
Well, the first thing I could say is, and it applies to both contests, is try to keep your same routine throughout the season. If you study on Mondays and you read, try to keep that same routine week to week. If you're scheduling vacations, try to do it around, what your routine, if you can. That's where I find that I always run into problems, is when I break my routine. Things just, they don't come to you as clearly. So, keeping that same routine, I think, is very, very important in these contests.
Absolutely. Sorry, I don't unmute myself. Yeah, I mean, routine is it's almost like getting up and going to work, like the way you do it. It's just like you get in your routine. You don't want to break that. That's some really great advice. But this is kind of a unique contest because there's games throughout the whole week. There's a Thursday game. Sometimes there's Saturday games and there's Sunday games. What do you think about Thursday games? I know a lot of people like to jump the gun and get on Thursday. What's your advice for betting the Thursday game in these contests?
The advice that in 2007, the very first advice that I ever got in contest play was winners normally don't play on Thursdays. And I said, why? Why don't they play on Thursdays? Well, what it is, it's information. It's information. So from Thursday to Saturday, there's an abundance of information that you should consume before you make your decisions on Saturday morning for your selections. If you jump the gun on Thursday, you are locked in, and lots of things can change in 48 hours. With the experience that I've had, I know that I do not want to lock myself in early before finding out what and who is stepping on the field Sunday. So, right. If you are going to take a Thursday game, be very confident on it, and know that, it's one pick, it's one win. You will have 4 other games. Right. So how important is that one win to you? Is it more important than the information? That's up to you. You'll have to figure that out. So
imagine finding out your quarterback's not playing on Saturday morning when you could have got that pick in, right? I mean, that is such quality.
I think you had Tony George on earlier. We just had a minor conversation about him and a survivor and him going on a vacation to Cabo. where he took Pittsburgh early in the week to find out that Ben Roethlisberger was not starting on Sunday. So to your point, Kev, information. You need to consume it. You need to hear it. And in my opinion, that Thursday game is not important enough to not consume that information. So,
percent, man. I think that waiting to the last possible minute is so important. So when you get a proxy, you got to make sure that they're ready to put your picks in as late as possible. I think that's the important thing. You don't sell out for a Friday. You want to make sure that you're getting your picks in at the very latest.
absolutely.
But there's also like other prizes, like booby prizes when it comes to these things, and so they like reward you less money, but you can win a booby prize like 25 grand for just a quarterly by just being the worst, right? So should we ever play for those booby prizes? What's your opinion on that?
So my opinion on the booby prize is, I believe the booby plays the bottom 5, I believe, right? Or is it the bottom 2? I have to look at the rules. I think it might be the last and the second to last. And then the quarterlies. You really don't have a large opening to hit these booby prize. So if you are trying to chase that, so let me get to the back. Top 100 contest. Okay, you got 100 spots that pay out. Okay, the booby prize you have 2. Okay, are we chasing for the top 100? Or are we chasing for the bottom 2? Now the strategy in that, where are you at during the season? Do you have a bad run your first 3 weeks? Do you want to actually try to hit the booby prize bonus? Okay? That is all depends on where you are in the season and where you sit. Last year, for instance, I believe the first 15 picks, I was 4-11. Okay.
When I see
that,
I
instantly try to go for the booby, right? Try to get some money. We're chasing the money down there. I'm already shit the bed going 4-11 in my first 15 picks. Let's see what we can do to hit the bottom.
My theory
as far as the booby goes is I would never chase it. You're all trying to be in the top. So, again, it really has to do with where you are in the contest, where you sit, and where.
Yeah, it's fine. My theory is very similar. I think that I've seen people come from nothing and make massive comebacks. I think even if you're doing bad the first half of the season, you don't go for a booby unless it's like the third quarter and you're completely out of it, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah,
because the booby prize doesn't pay as much, but you can still make your comeback on the way back and still cash in that top 100. So I think that's a fantastic point, man, and I love your advice on that. That makes total sense to me. Can you give us like some insight on watching games? Do you watch games? Are you a nervous guy? Do you watch some of the games that you have picks on, or are you on Red Zone? How you do that?
Yeah, most of the Sundays I spend time, I'm actually looking for cohesiveness of teams. I'm trying to pick out stuff from what I see with my own eyes that doesn't show on numbers. That's not not a model. It's not analytical. Okay. It's something that you see with your eyes. It's intuitive. And so I try to find that, whether it be a coach and a quarterback that seem that they don't get along. Or whether it be a defensive coordinator that gets his guys just raging to go out and play a hard game. As an athlete, the emotion really does make a big difference in game to game. So when I watch games, I try to pick out, if I can find spots that will apply to the week following or that week where I can hop on possibly a live bet where I find something. So yeah, the majority of the games I watch are more for me to peel out with my eyes what I'm seeing informational wise than the final score. The final score is gonna show up on the box score no matter what I do. So I'm actually trying to pick the game itself. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Roger, thanks for chiming in. He's an eye test too, eye test type guy. So, do you have a system where you're like handicap? Sorry, I was muted there. Do you have a system where you handicap some of these games, and are you using like metrics, or you kind of use the eye test, or do you do a little bit of both?
I'm an intuitive guy. I do not have a model, and I am not an analytical guy. Now, does that mean that I don't look at the numbers? No, I do look at the numbers. I do see that. I do use it. A lot of my handicapping is correlating stuff. I try to correlate stuff. I use my intuitiveness. I use a little bit of number. I use whatever information I can possibly suck in and correlate to land on a game. Now, over the years, I've tracked myself over the last 18 years, so I've got a real good idea of my biases and my tendencies, and so that has helped me a lot over the years.
Wow, it's funny. I remember when we first met, you talked to me a little bit about like how your contest goes, and you said that you put more into contests than you actually do betting. Can you explain some of that?
Yeah, early on, as a recreational bettor, as a youngster, I think that, obviously the community's gotten huge with sports betting. It was kind of a behind the scenes thing. We kind of like hit ourselves a little bit. And so, it was more recreational for me. And going back far, I was involved in an offshore site called caribsports.com. And they ran a contest, and this was in 2003, I believe, called the Carib Sports Invitational, and it was a mimic of the Westgate Super Contest, Pick 5. It was a $250 entry, and I ended up winning that for, I believe it was 22,000. And I actually at that point had no idea that there was a Vegas contest Pick 5 whatsoever. No idea. Okay. And I picked up an article that I read by Dave Tooley from View from Vegas, talking about a champion from a contest, Pick 5 here in Vegas. And I instantly came over saying, look, if I can win this one online, I can win this one in Vegas, no problem. Right. 11 years it took me to place, and 16 to win one. So, not that easy, guys. Just not that easy. And, if you follow the millions right now, you'll see that, you could have the hottest run of your life at 60% and you don't even make the money in the millions. So it's a tough game. The skill sets and, the contest itself has gotten a lot higher. The information's abundant to everybody. So, people are sharp, a lot of sharp these days. Yeah.
Yeah, man. This contest keeps growing. It's like looking for an edge, and you have to keep beating more and more people.
Yep.
But you seem to love the competition, the football season, and just going in there and giving it your all. Tell me how important it is to have proxies putting in your plays and being able to play from it.
It's probably one of the most important things of the contest. If you don't have a trusted proxy, you could do this all for nothing. My trusted proxy, and we talked about this a little bit ago, Kev. You need to find a trusted proxy that you can find to get your selections in as late as possible. That's the name of the game, in my opinion. And there are a lot of guys that are popping up in this community for proxies. Just make sure you do your service. As Kev asked me about the proxy, my proxy, David Tooley, we not only was he my proxy, he's now one of my closer friends. So, once you get into these contests and you start entering, and you'll start befriending your proxies. That's how close you get to them. So very important. They become your family in these contests. So
He's a great guy. I met him as well, man. And I have to ask you this: are you ever going to stop playing contests?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're gonna roll me in a wheelchair here to sign up. I will. If I can't get in a wheelchair, then you can. I don't know. I'm coming in a wheelchair. I'm signing up. If I'll probably die mid-season. So that's how it's gonna work, bro.
Oh, of course, man. I don't think I'm ever going to leave too. But that's Circa. Just real quick before we go, how well does the Circa and Derek Stevens and Mike Palm treat you?
I comment on this a lot online and social media. Since the day I showed up here, I have been part of their family. I have been treated with respect. And It's unlike anywhere else. Absolutely is. And I think Kev, Jeff Benson, Derek Stevens, all his crew, unbelievable. I look forward to seeing them every time I'm here, and they treat me like I am a brother or a family member, and it's unbelievable. So
they treat you like family at the Circa, and that's what people have to remember. Tony, thanks so much for coming on and talking about your contest history. Can't wait to hang out with you a little bit later in Bar Camera. Thanks for coming on.
Kev. Thanks for having me, man. Thank you, bud.
All right, my friends, that was the illustrious Tony Gordon, 2022 Millions winner. Now we're going to take a quick break and bring on the director of Sportsbook Operations, and Jeff Benson. All right. Well, here we are. We're back, and we Director of Sports and Operations, and Mr.
How you doing today and getting through the weekend? It's been a busy day of contest signups, but really excited to kick off contest week. Excited about everything happening here at Radio Row. Tons of podcasts, tons of media for myself, Mike Palm, and Derek, and really looking forward to contest weekend. I mean, obviously we did a ton of signups last week with Bet Bash in town. We expect to do the same here for contest weekend. So, we got the Champions Dinner to kick us off tonight before we get to an open bar at Bar Canada. Tomorrow we'll be in Stadium Swim for an open bar event up there with the team from 10 to 4. And then on Saturday, we have our football preview hosted by Mike Palm with some esteemed guests as well from 2 to 4 up here in the Galaxy Ballroom.
You can follow Jeff at Jeffrey Benson 12 on X. Jeff, I got to ask you, man, first, do you sleep? And what's the toughest part of the job in being the director of operations here at Circa Sports?
I do get some sleep. Obviously, it's a little bit less during football season and particularly during contest signups. But, I try to get 8 hours a night and then maybe work the other 16. But, obviously contest signups, particularly as we get to the last couple of weeks where we end up doing 50% plus of the contest signups. A lot of the locals and people who are coming out for the events and getting ready for football. That's probably one of the toughest parts, just managing it all, making sure we're getting people in and out, less than 5-10 minutes, and just making it a smooth, seamless experience. So kind of keeping that all together and just trying to manage that as best as possible. In between, doing some trolling on Twitter and, going to some corporate meetings and, a couple of the other things on my, job responsibilities. I would say those are, a few of the toughest things.
Nobody trolls like Jeff Benson on Twitter. So if you just need a good laugh, it's definitely a good place to follow. So got to ask you the hard-hitting questions here about the Circa. Do you guys set your own numbers all the time in the marketplace? And that's what I've always known, and you do that. But you ever sometimes look at other books that might be setting a number?
Yeah, obviously, with the proliferation of odds screens out there, whether that's Bank Odds or Don Best or Unabated, people have access to see what your numbers are, much more so than in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s when you could, walk across the street here on the Strip, and there may be a point, 2 points worth of difference. You don't really see that as much now with the odds screens. So we are aware of what's going on in the market. We are aware of what some of the other market makers, whether that's Pinnacle, Chris, Bet Online, some of the sharper offshore sports books have. But we are originating a lot of our own stuff, whether that's, Jeff Davis doing the hockey, whether that's Chris Bennett, who's our director, doing, the baseball. We have our college football guy. We do the first college football numbers on Sunday morning. So we do originate a lot of stuff. There is some stuff that is maybe a little bit more market consensus and that we're not originating. But I would say a lot of the stuff that we do hang here, whether that be futures or just regular games, that we are coming up with our own unique number.
Is money coming in on a side in a different sports book? And of course, you can see it as Bank Odds or what are the other odds screens? Does it your line before it comes in on your side?
It really depends. Obviously, people will bet early at some shops and they'll bet late at other shops, and there's a lot of things that are going on that are going on in the ecosystem to hold the screen or hold the number. They may bet us first, they may bet us last, with a lot of different reasons behind that. Just because a number moves elsewhere doesn't necessarily mean we're going to air move it and go right to that number. There's so much nuance to this. And you really got to dig into it. Why did that number move? Do we think a sharp group hit it? Did it move because there's new news or information? Did they move it because, they have liability? So I think, Matt Metcalf, who used to be our director, he made a really great point that, when you're not originating and you're not doing the art of price discovery, and you're just looking at the screen to copy, as the copying book, you're in price discovery discovery mode the whole way because you really don't know what the true number should be. So that's the danger of looking at the screen and saying, if Pinnacle moves or if Circa moves or if Chris moves, you move along with it. You don't always have the full story because you're not seeing the bets. So typically, we're not air moving just because other shops are going to a certain number. But if the market gets hit with a release or something like that, there's a number of factors why we would move if, without taking a bet, I guess you could say.
How do you deal with the more difficult clients, or even difficult like first time guests? I don't mean like hating people, but just people that are complaining or arguing.
It's a great question. I host a lot of our big players, and they can, certainly be needy or difficult or however you want. I mean, that's all part of the game in terms of hosting. And, you have people that may not have the best experience for whatever reason. For me, I just try to be as available and approachable as possible. You'll find me a lot in the sports book talking to players, working the line, responding to people on Twitter, text, DMs, emails, things like that. I think by doing that, being transparent, getting ahead of things, setting the expectations for you can get X amount on this market, and really trying to help people on the front end, you avoid a lot of the criticisms and the complaints and the stuff on the back end.
That's great, because you kind of attack it from the front end. I really like that philosophy right there. Get ahead of it, know what you're dealing with, and things like that. Now, a different question that I'm going to spin it a little bit differently, and this is another kind of head scratcher to me, and maybe a lot of other sportsbook operators. But how do you educate politicians, man? I'm seeing these crazy taxes coming in, and it makes me feel like it's going to make it harder for the consumer to win in sports betting. What can we do to get around that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I think you have a lot of people up top, whether that's regulators or politicians that are making the rules, and they don't, they've never made a bet, they've never run a book, and they don't understand, hold percentages and odds and all of these different things that go into running a sports book. And
just paying people.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Illinois, for example, we've been in Illinois here, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it may be. And, when we started, we had, our tax rate that we paid on any of our revenue was 20%. And obviously now that's increased. I think it's up to like 25%. FanDuel's and DraftKings doubled based on their volume. And it stinks when you go into these, these places and you pay for market access fee and you structure all your agreements and all this stuff around, the tax rate you're paying. And then just, with a snap of a finger that can change. And, this year now they're adding the 25 and 50 cent tax on top of that for players. It really makes it difficult for operators to operate. And then obviously, it's hard enough to win when it's minus 110. And, now when you're laying minus 112 or minus 115 or minus 120, when you factor in, worse pricing for the consumer, or they've got to pay a 25 or 50 cent tax with every wager, it really makes it difficult. And like I said, I think you have so many hands in the cookie jar, so many people trying to get paid. People just look at this industry and they're like, oh, it's a $1 billion industry. There's so much money. Yeah. But the way that people are getting squeezed, both the bettor and a lot of these shops, the people up top now may be overtaxing things, which may be, maybe it was undertaxed to start. Now maybe it's being overtaxed, and we've got to find that healthy medium that allows operators to operators and bettors to bet. And if, you go too far, the bettors are just going to go back offshore, which is not what legalization was, centered around. And then conversely, I think when you think about the operating environment as a whole, DraftKings and FanDuel, they may operate at a 12, 13, 14% hold, whereas we may operate at a 3% hold. And I think, putting in advantages or tax structures based on the model that you're operating, we can't pay the same amount in taxes that DraftKings and FanDuel have. So, being able to have, maybe a sliding tax scale, or a number of different advantages based on how you treat consumers, whether you welcome all bettors or not. I think all those things could are nuanced, but can certainly be discussed. And the more competition there is in the space, whether it's an us, a prime, exchanges, you name it, I think the more operators that are out there, whether that be the mom and pop, operators, the smaller operators, or the big conglomerates, the better it is for the consumer. And the less options the consumer has, the more likely that people are to play offshore, where they can get better prices or play on credit or X, Y, and Z.
That's a great answer. They're just driving people right out of the marketplace themselves. I mean, there's still bookies out there. There's still places that it's hard to catch people getting offshore and doing things illegally, and especially with the digital age, right? And I think that's mistake. Politicians are making those mistakes. That's a great answer, and I think we just got to be louder and try to write into our politicians as much as possible. All right, now for the easier questions, will there be an overlay this year, million?
I would say the answer to that is yes, is a very small favorite, and if there is, the overlay could be $50,000 to $100,000. I think right now we're
minus 110 to the yes, plus 100 to the no.
Yeah, maybe minus a quarter, plus 05. I would say we'll land somewhere probably between 5,900 and 6,200
entries. I
entries.
try to get you 5-cent lines on that. Yeah, I try to sneak 5-cent lines on like that.
Minus a quarter, plus 15. I'll give the listeners a 10 cents.
All right. Well, that is great. How about Survivor, man? What do you think this gets to this year?
I would say we're tracking somewhere between 18.5 and 20,500 entries.
$20 million. That's life-changing money, Jeff.
Yeah, obviously,
if you don't have to work here anymore.
Correct. Last year we had 8 winners. They split $14.266 million. They each got roughly $1.78 million. I'd imagine, depending upon how things play out, you're probably going to have a split. It's probably, unless there's a miracle, going to go to 20 weeks. Obviously it'll be nice once we get to 18 regular season weeks plus 2 bye weeks plus Thanksgiving and Christmas, get to 22 picks. I think that'll lessen the amount of winners and increase what people are taking home. But yeah, I think we'll get pretty darn close to that 20,000 mark.
That is extremely exciting, Jeff. Where could our viewers and listeners get your wonderful information and follow you?
Yeah, I'm a constant tweeter, so you can follow me on X or Twitter at Jeffrey Benson 12. That's where you'll find a lot of my stuff. Obviously, likes to mix it up, engage. You can shoot me a DM, ask me questions on there. I try to tweet out, what our closing contest numbers are, when we open markets, what limits we're taking on certain things, and just try to be as engaging as possible.
Make sure you check out Jeff Benson at Jeffrey Benson. It's been a pleasure, Jeffrey. We'll see you in the sports book.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, my friends, that was Jeff Benson, and we are waiting for Las Vegas Chris to come on right now. And he's just sitting, waiting for us to make some changes. But hey, I love the answers that Jeff gave us, man. We should do more and write our politicians, try to explain them and educate them, because they literally know nothing about the industry itself. And I think it's really important for us to try to get an edge in the legal books. Do we have to go offshore? Will we? Absolutely, we will. But we'd much rather, get in the legal books when possible, if the politicians allow it. And I think that's very important. Very exciting that Circa Millions, he thinks, is going to get to 18.5 to 20 million, or Circa Survivor, I should say, and then Circa Millions. Very close. I think it does hit 6 million myself, but let's ask a different great contest winner here, one of my friends, and Mr. Las Vegas Chris. Chris, thanks for coming on today. How are you doing?
How's it going, buddy? Good to see you again.
I know. Chris wanted me to pick him up on the way from the airport, but I don't think my limo driver was. He wouldn't even stop at Walgreens for me today. He was a little busy, so unfortunately, Chris had to find his way here himself. But hey, you made it, and Chris, enough joking around, man. You are the best contest player I've ever met in my entire life, and it's not just these contests; it's a lot of contests, and you have a hell of a lot of experience. Can you tell our listeners how long you've been playing these contests?
I think since around maybe like 15 years. So, and
Wow.
I've had good success with it, but you need to have a lot of luck, and you got to put yourself in a position to get lucky. Last year, if things had ended week 16, I would have cashed 5 different prizes for 418,000, and then I completely collapsed and didn't collect a dollar. So, you've got to fade variance and get lucky, and just keep plugging away.
Yeah, keep plugging away. Well, there you go. 15 years. That's a lot of experience. How many contests have you cast in?
Well, I'm not sure. I think about 10, made 10 decent ones. And then this year we're doing something different. We're doing a private contest also. I like this concept. Same concept as against the Circa lines, but it's pick 100 games of your choice. So you can pick 0 or you can pick every game each week. And that takes a little bit more thinking involved, because you don't have to take those 5 picks every week. Not everybody has to, is picking from the same. Everybody's picking from the same technically, but you're not pigeonholed into the 5 every week. So you want to pick 2 one week, you want to pick 7 another week. That gives you a lot of flexibility, and there's a little bit more skill involved with that. So looking forward to having that as a smaller private contest.
Okay, well, there you go. Roger says, Chris, glad to see you looking healthy. And I think health is a very important thing that we always have to remember. And Chris, nobody knows more than that than Chris. Can you tell us the importance of your health when it comes to just living itself and obviously getting in these contests?
Well, if anybody's dreading getting a medical checkup or a colonoscopy, rest assured, please don't. It's silly. I was an idiot and I waited too long. And a couple of years ago, diagnosed with colon cancer, and I live with permanent effects. I had a serious battle with it for a period of time, and I'm cancer free now, but I live with the permanent effects, and $1.4 million in medical bills. So I was lucky I was insured. Some people may not, but trust me, I'm going for colonoscopy a week from tomorrow. And if that's good, then I can go 3 years without one. It'll be a really good sign. But trust me, a colonoscopy is nothing. They put you to sleep. You wake up 1 minute later.
That's so important. I agree. And thanks for reminding everybody about that. Don't be scared, dude. It's there. It's there. You know what you regret not doing the easiest thing in the world, especially if you have decent insurance. Go out there and get yourself checked. Now, I got to ask you a little bit more about contest theory and how you do this. Do you ever ask any other sharp, respectable bettors or colleagues kind of their opinions on their NFL, or are you completely solo with your plays?
I like to listen to what everybody has to say, from the regular square people to the uninformed to the very informed. I mean, you want to have a pulse on what people are thinking, and kind of have that as an input. I'm basically kind of following my model for the most part. My model will spit out more than 5 games a week to choose from. So I'm trying to whittle down from that. I'm spending hours and hours and hours and hours autopsying last year and the year before again. And I like to do it at this time of year because it puts me in touch and reminds me what happened last year. For gosh sakes, do you know how many times the Jets were favored last year? Take a guess. How many do you think?
3?
11. Do you remember that?
God.
This is the type of stuff that you pick up on when you're autopsying what happened last year. There's a lot of stuff I don't remember the way I remembered it 2 weeks ago. So not only that, I'm data mining all the spread history going back since 2016, and I'm breaking it down in a lot of different ways. And it's taking me hours and it's helping me with filters this year. I've come up with some filters I'm going to use in the contest this year, which I think are going to be helpful.
Wow, that is just amazing how much time you spent into it, and you have these spreadsheets and just ways of so it sounds like you do listen to everybody, including the non-sharps and the sharper people, and you kind of just take everything and then make your own decision, but nobody really sways you, right?
No, not in the NFL. I'm pretty confident. I've had a pretty good track record.
Yeah.
And I've got to trust the model. I've got to trust my instincts. I got to trust history, and just hope it goes well. I like to hear other people's information to remove plays, not add them.
Would you ever go for a booby prize if you're losing?
I won the booby prize. I won a quarter a couple of years ago. So
okay. So you did. Was it late in the year or was it early in the year?
it was either the second or third quarter. But that was more or less by accident. You get to a point and had no choice but to shoot for it. But the year that I came in second and fifth, one of my entries started off with 2 1 and 4s. And I thought about it briefly, but realized you can't do that. The reason you can't do that is because there's just too many prizes on the way up. There's too many ways to win, trying to win. And because you have less of a chance of cashing a decent prize going for booby, you don't do it.
That makes true. And I think that, you came back from almost nothing in one of your, I think it was 2021 or 2, maybe 23. You came back from almost nothing and actually placed like top 3, top 5 with one of your entries. And you also placed second with an entry, but one of them was so dead
that's
in
the
water.
one. Yeah, I finished fifth, and I.
So not only you won a booby prize, you literally came back and still won fifth. That's amazing.
But the one that finished second had entirely different entries as the one that came in fifth in the long run, because I had all that. I had to make up for a lot of stuff. So that was a lot of fun that year. It was a lot of fun.
When you think about teasers, I had a question from Roger. He says we both love teasers. It's not really a question, but I guess it's funny. We talk every day, every week during football season, and you have all these teasers going on, and it blows my mind how you keep up with it. But you kind of like you tease from one game to the next almost, and then you kind of hedge with the next. How's that work?
We don't have enough time for me to explain that, but I've spoken to some of the sharpest people in the industry, and I'm having a hard time getting them to understand what I'm doing. And it's not because either of us are smarter than the other. I'm trying to do multiple things at the same time, and I have different purposes for the teasers. And I started off in a huge hole last year and ended up really, having one of the best years ever, using parlays, which were primarily alt lines or money lines, and then teasers. And that's going to be my primary go-to. I think I have a huge advantage because the stuff I'm doing makes me look like an imbecile. So it preserves accounts and it doesn't draw as much of attention. And that's part of my research. I'm doing a lot of teaser research. I know every single thing you could possibly ask about teaser history by Monday or Tuesday. I will be able to look at it like this. So I combine that with the model, and then I also combine using teasers and parlays with chasing middles also, and reducing exposure on my bet. So that's why I've got all these different things intersecting.
You told me something last year about how you're a little bit more reluctant to tease bad teams. And I think that you said that the variance might be higher. Is that kind of something you believe in, that a bad team could either lose by a lot and not cover the teaser, or how does that work?
Well, here's the thing with, the rumor has it that you can't tease totals. Well, sure you can, because the teaser record in certain situations for the overs are actually better than the lower line games. So if you know what you're doing, and the reasoning behind that is when the total's higher, you've got two teams that can score. They're more dependable. They're less likely to lay a turd sandwich and not score. In the other games where you might have two mediocre teams playing or 1-1, there's a lot of variance. Are they going to score this week? Are they going to, what's going to go on with them? So that makes it a little difficult in certain totals ranges. But in some totals ranges, they're not all that bad. And I'm thinking about adding it to my arsenal this year if I have time to do more totals research.
Right. Well, more totals research. Yeah. Well, that is. It just blows my mind how much I don't know about teasers when you talk like that. I mean, everyone knows the long teaser or the long teasers, 2 to 7, 2.5 to 7. 7.5 down to 1.5. It's just there's just so much more to it when
Yeah,
it comes to
but
sports
but see,
betting.
don't feel bad because we will listen to show after show after show of sports betting personalities that are going to lie to you and tell you what you can do with teasers and what you can't do with teasers. They haven't lifted a pinky to do any research whatsoever. They know nothing. They are working off of data that is old, and it's ridiculous. They'll tell you can't tease through zero. They'll tell you only do long teasers. Okay, you keep believing that. You keep
That is,
believing that.
I agree. I hear the same thing every time almost on some of this teaser theory. I'm gonna have to have you more and just to dive into some of this a little bit more, Chris. But one final question for you: are you ever gonna quit playing football contests?
The wife wanted me to retire, so I actually through most of the summer wasn't sure I was going to do any football. I pulled back from a lot of the stuff that I have done in the past, and I'm trying to get regain some time because I have no time. These teasers and parlays, they sound great, they're profitable. I'm all happy about that. I'm working 15-hour days to get that, and it really takes its toll. And I don't know. I gotta when I move to Thailand, I won't. I got to get out of the country because if I'm in the country, no, I'm serious. I told the wife, I go, listen, if we still have the dog, we can't board them, and football's going to be going. You can't expect me to sit there and know football's going on, and I'm not going to bet. So
What kind of cigar is this, Chris?
trash.
Trash? A
Yeah,
trash
I don't
cigar?
know.
Good enough. Well, that's what Chris is to enjoy some of his spoils tonight because Chris is going to the victory dinner at 5 o'clock that Derek puts on for all the winners, and that's just Derek treats everybody. But Chris has always treated us great here at the Icebreakers. Chris, tell everybody where they can find your information.
Well, I'm going to probably do my weekly YouTube video with Ron. I might do some stuff with Ted. If you have the stomach for it, you can follow what I bet through Wager Talk. And that's about it. I'm on Twitter, Las Vegas Chris.
There you go. Make sure you follow Chris at Las Vegas Chris. Chris, it's always been a pleasure. I'll see you tonight at Bar Canada, my
Sounds
friend.
good.
All right, my friends, that was Las Vegas Chris, the best contest player that I know. That concludes our night for our podcast Thursday. Tomorrow we'll get here early, 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to get on with Tony George, Mike Palm, many other guys coming on tomorrow. Make sure you tune in, talk about contest weekend. Get over to the Circa, sign up for these contests. Until now, till later, go get some winners.